People are actually asking Todd, is Todd just doing that because he's standing there, or is it actually possible that someone could do all of that? And I say it's impossible. I don't know what you're talking about. Wow. Well, thanks, Greg. Greg, my neighbor. Yeah. And the commute is just right for me here today. And I don't. We probably do this. But Todd, yes, I don't know that I watched the 2 throws that you made.
They were awesome. They were awesome. Hit them right here.
I'm glad that you correct. The record says -2, but one of them was for +6.
Correct.
And
Correct.
-8. So.
I have a good QB rating. Good QB rating.
Perfect rating. I don't even know where to go, Greg. I got to be honest with you. About 2010, my boys. Braden was 10 years old, Jackson was 8 or 7, and they were going to Escondido Elementary School. And he would come home, Braden would come home and say, Dad, I heard a story about you today, that you punched Joe Montana in the face, and then and he kicked you, and then, you know, and I'd be like, Braden, that didn't happen. And he says, well, all the friends are saying it. And then he'd come home another later and say something else crazy. And I thought, oh my gosh, my kids, who are now born after I finished playing, have never... They don't know the story, and now they're going to hear it from all the goofballs at school, you know. And so I embarked on taking the next couple of years with Jeff Benedict to put together a narrative of basically my football story and my life for my kids, and paid him, and he did it. And about 2 years later, he came with this pile of papers, and I noticed that he put them in chapters, which I didn't know that he was going to do. And I said, oh, great. And then he said, well, can I have some people read it? And I said, well, that's fine, good friends or whatever. And then he started to send me their reaction. Oh, this needs to be published. Oh, this has got to be published. And I was like, there's no way it's going to be published, so don't worry about it. I got done what I wanted to do. I wanted it for my kids, and we're good. And then it sat on the shelf for a few years, just to age the story more, so that less and less people would be interested. And then finally last year, you know, I just felt like enough people that I trusted thought it would be useful in some ways that I published it. So we published it in October, and this is the book, and it's called QB, and my wife and kids really did it. Well, the neatest thing about it was when we decided to publish it, then we needed a cover, we needed a picture, we needed, you know, pictures inside, we needed people on the back to say something about it, and so that was a lot of fun for my wife Barb, who truly, you know, if this book is anything, it would never be anything without her. She spent a whole year of her life just editing. Finally, the editors wrote her and said, "You should just, you know, I should just quit because you're a better editor than I am." And then having the kids pick the picture and then be involved, and then really the last chapter we added, because the last chapter is about meeting Barb and getting married and having kids. And then so that was part of the fun of doing it, because then the kids actually are part of the narrative as well. So the funny thing is that I've gotten a lot of response from a lot, like 100 people, over the last few months who've said, I read it, and wow, it's really useful, and had different ideas and reasons, and even their kids. And I thought, well, that's great, because the only reason I ever put it together was for my kids to read it, and they won't read it. So none of my kids have read it, and so I feel really foolish about that. But I'm open. I mean, most of you probably have not read it, so it's probably not really worth kind of checking through much more about the book. But to tell you that I think some of the responses I've gotten, I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. I started in Utah, and my dad got transferred. He's a labor lawyer for Anaconda Wire and Cable, and he got transferred to the New York office, and we ended up living in Greenwich, Connecticut. And you know, not many pro football players come from Greenwich, Connecticut, but I want you to know that I'm from the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. And if you've ever been there, near the Stanford line where it gets a little hairier. You know? And when I grew up, I didn't notice it too much, but I did recognize that when nighttime came, I was home. If there was any opportunity to stay at someone else's house, to go for the weekend, to go to scout camp, to do anything away from home, I just naturally never did it. And I didn't think too much about it. I just knew I wasn't doing it. And so I'd make up a story or come up with something, tough to say, oh, I can't do that because, I got practice tomorrow, or, so anything. But I didn't really internalize it too much until I had to go to college. And then all of a sudden, holy crap, I honestly, just the anxiety that I felt about packing up and going to college when I chose to go to BYU, and that was in Utah. And although I had roots there and people I knew and family even, the idea of going across the country just overwhelmed me. And so I barely made it to college. And part of the story is about this journey, that anxiety. And it feels funny to say that, because Holman says, oh, I have anxiety. I feel like that's stupid. Everyone has nervousness and anxiety, but you don't really recognize until I got into my mid-30s. I've been cutting through the book pretty quickly. By writing it and doing it for my kids, I noticed that how much my life had been influenced by this genetic thing that is all over my mom's family. And who knew? I didn't know until I was mid-30s that, quit waving the book. Buy this book. No. I don't care.
We have copies for everybody.
Sales are not my thing.
Yeah.
My kids won't even read, so I can have 4 sheets. But by the story, so I think a lot of people who suffer from all kinds of genetic anxieties resonate with this story, because in many ways, like I tell people, anxiety was always there. Every decision I ever made, it was a piece of it. It was there, but it never won. It it was always something else that won. And so that's kind of in some ways people say, how do you go from 8th student quarterback in college to starting and being the Heisman Trophy race and finishing second and then being All-American and then, go up against Joe Montana and then take over and then go to the Super Bowl? I mean, how do you do that? Part of how you do it is have anxiety and then never let it win. Like, that's kind of how I would say it. I never said it before that way until I wrote the book. Because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that part of it. Because it does feel like a piece of it. It doesn't feel like the book. It just feels like a piece of the story. I will tell you one quick anecdote that's in the book about how I found out. So I'm playing for the 49ers, and Joe Montana he and I have been together at each other's throat for 4 years, and he was the king, I was the joker, essentially, and it was very difficult. You don't want to be in that spot. By the way, don't ever get involved with the king, all right? Because it doesn't go well. It's not a good match. And so in doing that, in those battles and everything that happened, I had all kinds of experiences that I should have seen where something's up. I'm not like others. I remember John Taylor was one of our receivers, a great player, great athlete. And John he was never nervous. And I remember before big games, he's laughing, telling jokes. Then he'd go on the field and he'd be laughing and telling jokes. And he'd score a touchdown, he'd be laughing and telling jokes. And it was like, all he does is laugh. And I felt like at times he's just doing it to me. Like he's just trying to make me feel bad, because but I used to think, well, how could you do that? How could you be that way? How's it possible? And how much jealousy I had for people who could handle really tough situations and not feel what I was feeling. And so it got so bad in 1992, 91. It all runs together. But it was 1991, where I was in Joe. It was my first year I played, and Joe Montana sitting on the sidelines, and everybody's saying every mistake I make, it's Joe. It's because it's not Joe. That's what we lose, because Steve. And in front of, and you can look it up on microfiche if you want. You can Google that for that. The Chronicle, I'm going to say October-ish, mid-October-ish, the Gulf War has broken out. And the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle was an op-ed, the title, tongue-in-cheek of course, except if you're me, the Gulf War, it's Steve Young's fault. Kind of like, well, everything else is, why not the Gulf War? So it gives you context for kind of what I was going through and how I was feeling. And I would tell people how much anxiety I felt, and of course you are, you're getting killed, you know? And so a lot of it was just felt like it was part of the natural experience, playing in front of 80,000 people, expectations, all that kind of stuff. And so it got to be a game about soon after that. And I'd always luckily been able to sleep. So that way it'd be debilitating if you couldn't sleep. So I'd always sleep even the night before the game. But before this game against Atlanta, it was a home game. On Friday night, the anxiety had gotten so incredible, and I put myself in such a bad spot, I didn't sleep. So Saturday, I'm feeling kind of sick, and I don't even want, and I skip the practice, tell them I'm sick. I stay at my little home up in I was living in a bar in Long Story, and Los Altos Hills. And then Saturday night, there's meetings up at the San Francisco the Airport Marriott. That's where we always stay. And so I canceled out. It's like, I can't make it, I don't feel well, and I literally didn't sleep the next night. And so I decided that Sunday morning, when I've been up for 48 hours, now I gotta go play. And I think to myself, you know, I really put myself in a spot here. But I said to myself, if we win, if I go play and we win, we beat the Falcons, I will say something to the team doctor. Because you don't say stuff to the football team doctor after a loss. Like, oh, we lost, and oh, by the way, here's my excuse. You don't do that. So I said to myself, if we win, I'm going to say something to him. Miraculously, we won. And I played pretty good, which tells you maybe football is not as hard. I'm sorry, Todd. It was I played pretty well. It's kind of crazy to think about that that's possible. And so I'm in this scene in the Candlestick Park, the old Candlestick Park, and we're always, you know, it's the locker rooms are back where the Giants and 49ers used to have locker rooms, and literally stuff would seep down. I don't know if it was condensation from the dew or the stands, the beer, or just this, you know, the tide had come up. I mean, who knows? But you're in this training room, which is kind of in the bowels of it all. Like you couldn't get further into this dark, dank place. And post game, I'm in there, and I'm relieved we won. And then here comes Dr. Jim Clint, who's the team doctor. You might know him. He lived in Atherton, worked at Stanford for many, many years. Passed away, you know, a handful of years ago. And his name was Reggie. We called him Reggie. And Reggie came in, and I had my towel, and I was just laying there trying to get some treatment and whatever the bumps and bruises were. And I said, Reggie, I need to talk to you. And he goes, oh, yeah, whatever. And I said, you know, something's wrong. And I went on to explain to him kind of what had just happened over the last 2 days, and how difficult things have become, and how, you know, I feel like it's been around most of my life, and something's not right. As I'm explaining it to him, here's Jim Clint. He was the team doctor with all the guys, like back in the, you know, '81 for the Super Bowl, and with, you know, Russ Francis, and, you know, Dwight Clark, and Freddie Solomon, and, you know, the guys that started the whole thing in San Francisco. And so for me, he was, you know, he might as well have been Bill Walsh or Eddie DeBartolo. I mean, he was in that group of guys. They were best friends. And so I was talking to someone that I revered, or at least really thought a lot about, and was nervous about saying this to him. As I was speaking to him, I noticed as he's looking at me, a teardrop just starts out of his eye and falls down and falls off his chin. And I'm like, Reggie, what do you... And another one. And I go, I didn't know what to do. He said, Steve, I have fought anxiety my whole life. I barely made it through medical school. And what you're telling me and what you're describing is adult, undiagnosed separation anxiety. As a kid, did you have trouble sleeping over at other people's houses? And I'm like, yeah, I did. Who knew? And he said, well, that's what this is. And I can't tell you. The next day, he had me up at a little child psychiatrist's office, and the guy gave me 10 questions. And if you answer yes to 5 of them, he says you have adult undiagnosed separation anxiety. I said yes to 10. Because if I'm going to do it, I'm all in, right? We're going to do this. And he turns to me and goes, Steve, I got to be honest with you. You know, most times when I see adults that have had this kind of severe separation anxiety as a kid, but undiagnosed now as adults, usually they really have been self-medicated and they're in the gutter or they're just living in their parents' basement or they really have, had a horrible life. I think you were MVP of the NFL, so I don't know what to do with you. And so I can tell you that my experience resonates with people because I didn't know, and I just took it and on we went. And kind of my mantra through the book and for my kids is why maybe I wanted them to see it was, look, we all have stuff, a lot of crap out in the world, a lot of mitigation, a lot of mitigating circumstances in our life. Some are self-imposed, some are genetic, some are, come at us without any fault, but there's all kinds. And in doing that, I just feel like, yeah, but it can't win. In fact, it can never win. And so in many ways, if I started talking and here we are. Greg, how are we doing?
We're doing great. Yeah, just keep going.
So that's what's come back to me from the book. A lot of it has been adults, kids, sports writers, people that I have friends, people from other places that I didn't even I hadn't heard from for 30 years. Like, thank you, my son, my daughter, me. Just to let people know that this is not something that you're just making up, And so that was pretty useful. With that, Greg, did you have something that you wanted to say?
No. I prepared a list of questions just in case, but the first time I heard Steve talk publicly, he was asked about Super Bowl 29, 6 touchdowns, won the Super Bowl running away, Super Bowl MVP, and you guys who all know me well, I was so impressed. His response was, I can't even talk about that without going back to the beginning and all of the stuff that led up to it, without all the hard work, without the grind that came to it. So if I can tee that one up for you, just say, hey, how'd your NFL career start?
So, well, I don't know where to begin this one. I think we should probably just start here in San Francisco because those that have been around long enough to remember, in 1981, Eddie Bartle and Bill Walsh came together and started something that revolutionized football. It revolutionized it on the field, it revolutionized it off the field, it revolutionized it in theory and in practice. It changed the game, and the teams that are winning today, the Super Bowl that was won 2 or 3 weeks ago by the New England Patriots, to all the teams that are now really good, all of them, are rooted in what those guys did starting in 1981. And they don't, some of them won't admit it or don't even know. But I can trace it because I lived it. And now, for the first time in 15, 16 years, we have kind of come home slightly, 2 generations away. Like, it's like having a immediate family member. Well, that's not what we have right now, but at least we have someone who's related to us. We have an aunt and a second cousin running the team now. Finally, they're in the family. Like, they understand. They know where we've come from. They know our roots. They know what we did that was so unique and different. And I tip my cap anytime I talk about my time in San Francisco to Bill Walsh, who would call teams together the first day that we met in summer camp every year. Everyone would be lined up in the auditorium at Sierra College, and he'd say, "Look, the first thing we're going to do before we run a play, before we have a practice, is we're going to talk about integration." And so at that time in 1987, you think integration, you're thinking racially, because that's kind of that's what that word meant. And he goes, no, that's just part of it. I want to integrate you all the way to every little bit of why you are with individuals on this team, where you hang with each other, whether it's any kind of cultural issue that puts groups and separates, socioeconomic background, geography, alma maters, race, religion, language, position, all the things that naturally segment groups of people, especially 50. And we're going to integrate this team. And I mean that in the lunchroom, in the buses, in the planes, in the locker room, on the field. Everybody is going to know each other. I'm going to force it. well before Mark Benioff now is famous for going into the Salesforce.com lunchroom and going, hey, spread out, get to know everybody, we got to integrate. He's basically copying Bill Walsh 20, 30 years ago. And Bill would do that. He'd come in the lunchroom during 2 days, all the quarterbacks would be at the table because that's who we know and that's who we think is cool and who we want to hang out with, and we're smarter than everybody else anyway. And so let's just hang together. And then he'd come in, see us, and go, out you go. And then you pick up your tray like, crap. You have to go meet somebody or talk to somebody or get to know somebody. And you know, you always knew them because you knew their name because it's on the back of their jersey. Right? Johnson. Hey, Johnson. You know? And then you'd get into a conversation. And what he was trying to describe for us is if everybody on this team cross-fertilizes to where we know something, you know, maybe an inch or two deep, maybe more, about each other, then when it's 3rd and 7, down by 4, you know, 4th quarter with a minute and a half to go, in Lambeau Field, and it's drizzling rain and 32 degrees and the wind is whipping, and you're so cold you literally can't feel anything in your body, that you'll get in the huddle, be able to look at each other, and that integration at that moment, the connection, instead of just a bunch of independent contractors who know of each other, actually know each other. So we're going to go fight for each other. I've always said football is a very unnatural sport. Nobody loves to just go ram into people. But at that moment of ramming, there's a reason why there's a desire that you have with your comrades, with the people that you're playing with. And that's why football is so unique. You can say it's dangerous or awful or barbaric. You can call it whatever you want, but at its base level, as you play it, there's something that happens that draws that sense of cohesion of too many people. If the teams were 3-on-3, the dynamics is completely different than if 11-on-11 really create the greatest human behavioral laboratory that I can ever imagine. Because the truth happens right in front of you. There's a score, 80,000 witnesses, it's lined out. In fact, there's a dang clock that makes you go, it keeps you up to pay, you can't delay it. You gotta go. And so, you know, how many times have I thrown an interception you know, there's a moment where the team looks back at me because I've just lost the game, essentially. And they say, why in the world did you do that? And then there's a little inkling of it that says, did you do that on purpose? And you don't know this part because you never threw an interception. So you don't have to worry about that. You're good. You're good. You weren't perfect. 2 for 2. But there's this moment when they look back and say, hey, what the heck? And what do? You turn to them and say all the things that happened. I didn't do it on purpose. You tell me all the things that happened. And so I did it, and I told him all the mitigating circumstances of all the horrible things that happened, like you turned the wrong way, and you didn't block, and he hit me, and you know, because stuff happens. And it inspired no one. They went to the sidelines, and the coach would say, what happened? He said, well, he's not Joe Montana, you know. That's the problem. Because what happened is I had infused into this group of people that's too many, mitigation. At the key moment, the moment of accountability, I'd actually infused mitigation. Don't ever do that in your marriage, by the way. There's key moments. There are, think about it, there's moments in your relationships where the person needs to take accountability. And if you go with the mitigation route, it's disastrous. If you go with the accountability route, you can at least survive. I've survived for 17 years of a billion mistakes using what I learned on the field in that moment of truth. When the lights are on, the 80,000 people are booing you, and your teammates are saying, why? You don't turn and give them the mitigation. You actually say, I screwed it up. It's my fault. The ball was in my hands, it's now in their hands. That's the bottom line. But I'll tell you what, we're going to go to get a drink of water, come back to the field, go back and win the game. What do you say? Then they go to the sidelines, and the coach says, what happened? They go, well, I turned the wrong way. My guy hit Steve just as he was throwing. It's an amazing thing that football has taught me. One of the best things about playing was this idea of the key moments where, in any relationship, where accountability needs to be there. It needs to be there right now. And you're the one that can put it in. And so one of the best things I ever learned in my football career was to watch for those moments of account. It's not tomorrow in the film room. It's not later in the locker room. Oh, sorry about that interception. Sorry about that. there's a moment right there in front of everybody. That's on me. And once you do that, it infuses all. And so for the 49ers, all those years of Bill Walsh integrating teams, developing accountability. He was the first one that didn't think you had to go in an extra hot place and keep water from you to get in shape. I mean, that's what it used to be. He was the first one. He was the first one to ever think about maybe holistically seeing your the health of your off the field. You know, your marriage. How's that? I mean, he was like interested in the holistic part of you as a player. Well before he was advanced in calling plays in the West Coast system that was so famous. Well, I mean, almost like I know groups of people, if you can have integration and accountability, I don't care what play you call. Call anything you want. You know? I don't care who's out. I mean, you're gonna win or be right in there. And the teams that are winning today. And so for me, my career, looking back on those years, that's what I learned and took from the game. That's what I was able to have a chance to do. But in the middle of it, I was fighting for my life because Joe Montana, again, was the king. And I'd have these little moments where I would play. Bill loved me to, like, he'd say, Steve, go in. And I'd go in, and Joe, he wants me to come in. And Joe would be like, what the? Joe would go out, and I'd play, and, I'd screw it up. Or there's a couple times where, we were in New Orleans, a tough ball game, and Joe drove the team down to the 15, and he'd go, Steve, go and run that bootleg play. I'd run in, and Joe would run out, and he'd look at me, and all the teams like, and I'd run the play, forget the motion, and I'd get sacked by Ricky Jackson, and then Joe would have to come in. Now it's 3rd and 20, and I get running off. And, there's a lot of moments like that. I noticed I remember those because of how hard it was to replace the king. And so a lot of my experience in making a career for myself is not just making a career to play. You got to replace the king. And every bit of that expectations are what makes that job and that endeavor really a lot of learning in it. The best moment of all those years was in the middle of that season I described to you when the anxiety was just through the roof. I had a week, we play Sunday, Monday's off, Monday's practice, and then Monday night and Tuesday you're off. Monday night I ran to a plane, Delta, back to Salt Lake City. I just wanted to get out, see my family. My brother was there, med school, just try to get try to get a moment of peace. I'm flying back. I get on the plane and sit next to Steve Covey, who's famous 7 Habits of Fame. What am I trying to say?
How effective.
7 Habits of Fame. Thank you, Greg. And I'd never met him before. And so I immediately, he goes, how you doing? And I just go, whoa. And I just throw it all out there. I mean, this is horrible. Joe Montana's on the team, and I can't play any good. And it was underinvested. I'm overinvested. And any mistake I make or anyone else make, it's my fault. And the coaches are, just on and on and on. He listens to me and he says, Steve, it's interesting. Boy, complicated. A lot of guys. Too many. It's been scientifically proven that 7 is the most people that can work together efficiently before it starts to devolve. In fact, 8, 9 is geometrically bad. By the time you get to 11, you got chaos. So that resonates with me, how you feel like there's too many guys. But you're missing the magic. The magic is in doing something and being effective or successful or win, or however you want to put it, with too many people. That's the magic. You do it with 7 or less, and I thought, well, Michael Jordan, who cares, right? It's only 5. Well, you do it with 11, that's a good time. And he said, and I travel the world looking for platforms for success, that allows people, employees, family members, whatever it is, the group, to have a platform to be able to iterate and see how good they can get. That's the ultimate place to be, to work, to a family. It just gives you a chance to see how good you can get. And when I look around, I try to amplify all the platforms that I see that are great. Let me ask you a couple questions. Your owner, Eddie DeBartolo, pretty good owner. He's the best. He's in the Hall of Fame. Your coach, Bill Walsh, he's pretty good. Hall of Fame. Joe Montana's on the team, right? I'm like, yeah, that's the problem. Let me ask you this. If you had to go ask him a question, like a mentor, see if he could help you out a little bit. Would he answer your question? I'm like, yeah, he would. You know, Steve, I gotta be honest with you. Again, travel the world looking for great platforms. I honestly don't know if I've ever seen a better one than the one you're in right now. Oh. Ooh, this spun different than I thought. And it literally turned my axis on its, just like it was just spun. Because suddenly I recognized how lucky I was, instead of how miserable I was. And it changed everything. The next day I raced down to work. He asked me another question. Steve, it only works if you're willing to find out how good you are. It's risky. Do you want to know how good you are? Because you might find out maybe you're not as good as you thought. Are you willing to take the challenge, the quest? I thought to myself, in deep down, yeah. That's kind of what it's kind of why I do it. To see if it's possible. See if I can. I'm in for that. He goes, then go do it. Literally that next day and ongoing, I was like looking to the quest. I remember the Dallas Cowboys we played early the next year. Troy Aikman, they were the best other than us Cowboys. Troy Aikman was a great quarterback. We're warming up at Candlestick Park. Quarterbacks warm up with the 50s going in different directions so they see each other all the time. And I saw him, ran up to him, Troy, how you doing? Great to see you. I'm on this quest to see how good I can get. The only way I can find out is if I play the best. I'm so grateful that you're here. It's so great. Welcome. You know? And he looks at me like, what the hell? Oh, he's just lost. I almost hugged him, you know? Because I was so I was so in for this quest, and I tell you this just to give you context. The 1992, that next season, I was MVP of the league. Not to be brag, but just to say, huh, wow, and something that was miserable had spun and given me an opportunity to go iterate and find out something that actually spun well beyond anything I could ever imagine. And so, and what's interesting about writing a book is a lot of this stuff I'd forgotten myself. So if you ever want to kind of, you know, find out what made you tick and how it worked, go write a book. You kind of find, oh, who knew? You forget all this stuff. But anyway, that kind of defines, if you're talking about the 49ers and how I did it and how I got there and how I survived and even thrived at times, was really about a big change that happened in 1991 that allowed me to kind of see things differently. Home, I always promise. Hey.
I'm talking, preview, people are kind of checking me out. But I'd say it's 150 people. What do you need? You're more important. What do you need? No, you're more important. You sure? All right, I'll be home in a minute. I'll be home soon. Well, what do you need? Is it, oh, did they pick that? No. Yeah, what? Okay.
Tom Colbert.
Exactly.
That's my family.
Yeah.
So I promised my wife, we got married in 2000, so it's only been 17 years. And about a year in, she's like, I can't get a hold of you. You need to. And I said, look, if you ever call again, it was one of those moments where you're like, you make these promises. If you ever call again, I will answer. I don't care what I'm doing. And about 15 times in the last 15 years, I've been doing something really awkward that would be to answer a phone. What do? I got to answer, right? So here we are again.
So this would be a good time to transition to
Yes.
Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Steve?
Yes.
So I did read your book, and I don't want to spoil it, but the story where you had dinner with Joe Montana and his children,
Yeah.
can you relay that?
So it was funny. So I was nervous about putting that in the book. I was single all the time I was playing, and so people are always like at Christmas time or Thanksgiving. You're like, well, you have a place to eat, you know. And one early year, Joe and Jennifer Montana asked me, "You want to come over for?" And I think it's Thanksgiving dinner. And I said, "Yeah, you're great." And so we're having dinner. It was nice, beautiful. I mean, my gosh, everything. Of course, the king does everything perfect. And so we're at dinner, and his kids are very young, 2, 3, maybe 4 at the most. And one of them turns and says, "Hey, Dad, is this the guy we hate?" And Joe, as good as ever, like he doesn't listen. He goes, "No, that was somebody else." So that stuck out, huh? I've heard about that story. That's great. Yeah. That was somebody else. Yes?
How do you think things would have turned out if there was no Joe Montana?
I mean, that's really an amazing thing about anyone's story is, and part of my college getting to play was just 10 things binary things had to go one way or the other. And I remember being so miserable at times and thinking, and so many people around me, you need to get out of here. This is killing your spirit. You need to get out of here and get your own city. I'm sure Joe would agree, like, get out. This is my town. In many ways, the rigor around that dynamic and saying, I'll compete and I don't want to run. In fact, in the book, it comes out too in 1991, I finally get a chance to leave. I can go. And everybody, my parents, everyone I know, anyone who was associated, like, run, And I was complaining, I'd been complaining so much, they knew I felt even stronger about it. And something said, I don't know every chance I had to actually do it, it was like that blank feeling, like, I'm going to stay. And I now look back, it's probably separation anxiety, right? I'm not moving anywhere. But I really did feel like I wanted, and so I stayed. And I think the rigor around, I think I started to really, not enjoy, but to appreciate what I was becoming, what I was learning about myself. And that has been a quest now, it's even more so with my kids, or, I'm always looking like, how can I be better? How can I iterate, keep this going? And so it's been I think without Joe, I would have been like, I'm either good or bad. I'm either starting or I'm not. I'm either all pro or not, or, I'm either, all those definitions you look for that define who you are. And truthfully, as, Todd didn't do it, and I gave him my mom's version, which includes all the wards and all and he just tore it up. So. I'm just kidding, he didn't. But you can be defined like that, or I think being with Joe started me on a way to deal with life that I think I would never have had the chance to understand without something rigorous like that. It was like, ooh. And you look back as most things that are tough and hard that you get through. You know what? I'm better for it. Every man. So there's no question. Yes, Tom.
What's it like to throw an interception? Is there like a play or a game or a player that stands out to you, like one of your greatest memories of playing in the NFL? Like one thing that stands out of.
I'm just going to Google who sacked Stanford interception.
That was pretty good then too.
Favorite player I ever played was Reggie White. Reggie he passed away of sleep apnea. I mean, one of the great human beings, 6'7", maybe 8, 350 pounds, but looked normal. Like it was like if you walk from afar, you're like, oh, that's a really good looking athlete. Wow, that guy can move. And he gets closer, you're like, holy crap, that guy's huge. And he gets up next to you, you're like, this is not right. and whenever he played, we knew each other because we broke into the league together in 1984 in the USFL back in the day. And he knew my dad because he was picking an agent. He'd heard that anyway, so we got to be friends. And so whenever we played, he played so ferociously. Like he would literally take people and just go, you out, you back, quarter, like. And but what I loved about playing him, because he was a friend, he was ferocious, and you were going to go down. but the millisecond that you went down, he became your friend. I mean, in a way that's almost just weird and awkward. Like, hey Steve, how you doing? Like, well, I don't know, you just threw me to the ground. You know? Let me help you out. Hey, good to see you, and you want to check. You know, how you doing? How's your dad? What's happening? You know, what's going on? You know, I'm like, you know, then 5 plays later, hey, so anyway, what do you know, how's everything? And I'm like, Reggie, no more. I don't want to. And so there's one game that he got like he sacked like 4 or 5 times. I'm like, Reggie, that's it. I don't want to see you again. Just see, I can't help it. Your right tackle sucks. But what I loved about that story, and I've used this a lot in my life, we all have many shoes to wear. For me, you know, I'm going to finish here, I'm going to race home, now I'm dad for the homework, or now I'm cook because dinner didn't get done. I mean, whatever it is, I'm going to transition to different shoes. And I always think of Reggie as somebody who could, in a millisecond, go from an 80,000 people in a ferocious, adrenaline-filled moment and could spin and become he wore new shoes. And I love that about another thing you learn in football, right? You learn because it's the truth. You learn that some people are really good at wearing different shoes and being really good at transitioning. And as much as I do, and almost every day I find myself going through the rigor of wearing different shoes 3 or 4 times during the day and just recognizing it and saying, I'm in different shoes, focus, you know, because otherwise you wear the same shoes all day long, even though you actually are wearing different. Does that make sense? You're like, stop it. All you're doing is wearing one pair, and the world, life's more athletic than that. And I always loved that about Reggie. He always taught me that great lesson. He was a favorite player, and probably the most scariest player. I guess the unblocked guy is scarier than Reggie. And my famous moments, obviously Super Bowls and championship games. I think playing the Cowboys in '94, we'd lost twice, lose the Super Bowl, chance to go to the Super Bowl twice to the Cowboys. I joke on radio all the time with Tom Tolbert, because it was at that point in playing for the 49ers that if you didn't win the Super Bowl because of the king, that you really, you know, they'd run you out of town. And so I always joke that when you lose the game, they'd go, you know, Vallejo, Nut Tree, Sacramento, Alpine, what is it, Meadows, and you know, Reno, like, on you go. And he loves when I say Nut Tree, I don't know why. You know, when you go, you know. Anyway, and so you're always on your way out of town. And so this time, if I would have lost again to the Cowboys in 1994, to lose another Super Bowl chance, I would have been debilitated for life. I mean, I might not have recovered. And so we won that game, even though they were probably the best team that's been around other than us in, 30 years. And so we pulled it out, and I just remember those moments, those key, moments of in Candlestick Park. I still, whenever I go back, I do go back to that moment. But you do remember, much more than those moments, you do remember the losses. You remember the screw-ups, the agonizing things that happen. Human behavior, I think, is a little bit, maybe that's just me. But I remember way more horrible events of losing I lost 4 championship games. So, we could have gone to not just 5, and Joe lost 4, so it's 9, 6. We could have 15 Super Bowls. I might be exaggerating by 1 or 2, but really, if we would have gone to the Super Bowl every time we were in a championship game, which is just winning that game, we'd have 15 Super Bowls, but we lost. So it's funny that you remember, we're the champions, 5 Super Bowls. Like, yeah, but what about the other 10? And even Tom Brady has 5, but he's lost 5 or 6 championship games. So it's like but Bill Walsh was always one that taught me, you attack Everest from base camp. You live at base camp. That was the kind of the idea that he said that, we don't start from the bottom of the mountain. We start from 3/4 of the way up. And that's how we live. We live in rarefied air. We don't go down. We resupply from base camp. And we attack Everest. And some days the weather comes in and we don't get there. But that's where we start. So I think those are the kinds of things that, just revolutionary things for Bill, how we thought about the game, how we thought about football. And doesn't get nearly the credit, even though he's a Hall of Famer and credited with a lot of things, really changed dramatically the game of football. I saw a hand go up. I think
What are the similarities and differences between an NFL quarterback and an investment partner at a private equity?
Yeah, so now I'm in private equity. I've actually been in private equity longer than I played. So it's crazy, talk about 2 careers. Real quick, and then I know we gotta go. My dad always told me, you got a plan and a dream. And I always called him, and I said, what do you want to be? I want to be Roger Staubach. I want to play for the Cowboys. I grew out of that, I matured through that. Because that's the dream, what's the plan? And well, the plan is that I'm going to finish college and go to law school. And okay, good. So then I started playing football for a profession, getting paid a lot of money. I remember telling my dad, what do you know? The dream and the plan are the same. And my dad didn't miss a beat. He's like, no, because average career is 3 years. I don't care how long you play. You've got another 40 years to live. What are you going to do? Wander around shaking hands with the car dealer? You know? That's nothing. I cast no aspersions, by the way. That's what he said. And he said, no, you still need a plan. And I said, well, and that's why I went to law school while I was playing. 1988 through 1994, a semester a year, I went to law school at BYU and graduated in 1994 through 3 Super Bowls. So winter semester, and Super Bowl's in February, semesters start the first week of January. I'm showing up a month late, and they don't care. And so I remember racing in from we go down the parades in Market Street after a big Super Bowl. Next day, I'm in class, and the teacher's just pounding me, because he knows I probably haven't read whatever it was that was due that day. And I'm like, and everyone's laughing, you know, because they don't care. It doesn't matter. So the plan stayed intact. And so as I was finishing my career, 3 or 4 of us, Harris Spartan, Ronnie Lott, Brett Jones, myself, 1987, we go down to Santa Clara because they give us the land because nothing's there. Where the stadium is, we practice across the street. They gave the land to Eddie DeBartolo to try to attract something to Santa Clara in 1987. By 1991, I mean, you know. And so you have to be stupid. I throw a bad pass and hit John Chambers in the head. I mean, it wasn't hard to see that there was something going on. And so all of us were in the locker room thinking, what can we do to get into all these deals, these venture deals up and down Sand Hill? And we started to trade what we had, our access to the locker room. Bring your kids, bring your family, you know, Sequoia, Benchmark, Kleiner Perkins, and anyway, just come on in. You know? And we started to get pretty commercial about all this stuff. And so I started thinking about what I was going to do with this law degree. And it just spun into starting a business, building it. It was backed by Excel KKR while I was still playing. Bain Capital, and then sold it. Got somebody to come run it. The guy who came and ran it is now my long-term partner. We've been together for 20 years in private equity. So I would never have transitioned to like that without my dad drilling me a plan and a dream. And the dream is never the plan. No matter how long you think, you know, he always said, unless you play golf or tennis. Because then you can play forever. So, hey, Greg, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. So as Steve said, he wears many shoes. That includes neighbor and dad and community member and school parent and bus driver and a bunch of other things. He is
Carpool, I probably have cut you off somewhere in Palo Alto. I apologize. I didn't mean to. I was late for carpool, but just, you know, white van, because we have, of course, the Youngs have 2 white vans. Why? I don't know. We love vans. So if you see a white van, it's probably me. I'm sorry.
So anyway, we really appreciate your coming out tonight. Appreciate your being a stalwart of the community, not just the business community, and are grateful for the gift that you gave everybody by sharing yourself and your story in the book and tonight. So thank you.